we'll be doing a much longer title, which I'm calling $1 Billion.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, thanks for the opportunity to speak to all of you this lovely evening. Have you ever seen or heard of something that had such an extraordinary price associated with it, that was so ridiculously priced that there was no way it could possibly be true? Like the Saudi prince who had a $75,000 gold toilet. Well, as you may remember or not remember, I'm a pharmacist. I don't have a $75,000 toilet. But the other day, I got a call from one of the nurse coordinators that I work with, asking me how could I possibly recommend an antibiotic called Zybox for one of our patients that would cost him $600. What was wrong with me? What are you thinking? This costs $20 a pill. So I explained to her that the patient had a severe infection that required treatment with a 4th or 5th line antibiotic, that it was necessary. And she understood. But more or less, she just wanted to vent at me. So afterwards, she then started to vent, well, how can drug companies charge this exorbitant amount of money? Where do they come from? This is inhumane. These drugs should be free. They don't have to tell the patients how much it costs. And while she was going on and on, I thought to myself, $600, that's nothing. Considering that we actually just gave a medicine that cost $32,000 to another patient for a single dose. So why is it that drugs cost so much? Is it the fact that drug companies are just inherently greedy and they just want to reap in all the profits they possibly can without any care whatsoever for us while we get poorer, they get richer? Is it the fact that the drugs themselves are made out of rare elements like gold and platinum, and we're paying for raw ingredients that are so expensive? Sometimes it actually is, but not most times. Actually, the answer relies, or it starts with the FDA approval process. In 1938, us Americans, we had our first drug scare, where there was a compound which came in an oral pill that people wanted in a liquid. So drug companies tried to solubilize the drug to make it in the liquid that little kids could drink. Unfortunately, they solubilized it with antifreeze. What happens when you consume antifreeze?
Not good.
Die. As a result of this, safety was emphasized for all drugs had to be proven safe before they could put on the market. However, this continued up into the 1960s, in fact up to 1962, when we had the thalidomide crisis. And if you remember, thalidomide was a drug used by pregnant women to treat morning sickness, but it resulted in severe birth deformities. So after this, the FDA mandated that drugs not only had to be safe, they had to be safer, and they also had to be efficacious. And the way they demanded this was through a series of clinical trials that had to be performed in order to document their safety. And these trials came in 4 phases. The first phase was testing in animals to make sure that the drug actually had its purported benefit. The second phase was testing in healthy human volunteers to make sure the drug wasn't toxic. The third phase was testing in a large-scale clinical trial with patients that had the disease to make sure they achieved the desired outcomes as well as safety. And the fourth phase was post-marketing surveillance, meaning that after the drug was on the market, they had to follow up with it. Well, would you believe me if I told you that drug companies isolate thousands of compounds each year and try to market them as drugs? And only 1 out of every 10,000 drugs that's isolated actually makes it to market. So does that indicate why an antibiotic might cost $600? Maybe. Now, of these drugs that are isolated, they're patented. And by U.S. patent law, drugs get a 20-year patent. Now this approval process that I talked about can take 14 to 17 years to go through the FDA approval process. This leaves a drug with 3 to 6 years of market exclusivity to rebound their losses. Does that mean that a drug should cost $600? Well, what if I told you that the average drug that goes through this approval process, through the 4 phases, through the patent process, costs $1 billion of research and development costs? If it's a cancer drug, try $1.75 billion. And if it's a respiratory drug, try $2 billion of research and development costs that have to be recouped in a small time frame. So you can see where these prices start to come from. That being said, you can now understand why drugs like Lipitor, which are huge blockbusters, are marketed so heavily and cost so much because of the costs that have to be reimbursed. Actually, 3 out of every 20 drugs that makes it to market is profitable. The others actually lose money. Now, drug companies themselves are not inherently greedy, but like any other company, they have to turn a profit. They have to make profits. Would you work for a company if it wasn't profitable? Or better, would you invest in a company if it wasn't profitable? Without investors, drug companies don't have the capital to fund these research ideas. And this is what leads to the innovation and design of new drugs to cure previously untreated diseases. Now, like other companies, they also lose money, and they have charitable processes. Drug companies donate millions of dollars to charities across the world, and they also give free drugs to third world countries that can't afford them. In addition, they have to deal with legislation from other countries. An example is in Brazil, where Gilead Pharmaceuticals was marketing drugs to treat HIV. The Brazilian government determined that they were too expensive, so they decided to void their patent and process the drugs as generics, thereby not having any profit to the innovative company. Finally, these drug companies need to deal with the government, and they deal with Medicare. As you know, Medicare is the largest insurance reimburser for the largest segment of the population that we have, which is the baby boomer population. And since they have such a huge demand and such a huge population, they actually have a buying advantage. And that when they buy drugs, they buy them at nearly cost. And the companies are forced to deal with it. So the largest purchaser of their drugs buys them for very little profit. So next time you think, well, how can a drug cost $600? The answer is multifactorial. And it's unfortunate that we have to pay this much. Thank you.